What if I told you the thing standing between you and God's provision isn't what you lost? It's what you've overlooked. Because most women I talk to after a divorce, after a layoff, after a devastating loss, all say the same thing. I have nothing left. But in 2 Kings chapter number 4, a widow says the exact words. And before the conversation is over, she has enough to pay every debt and fund her future. What changed? Not her circumstances, not her bank account, not her grief. One question changed everything. And if you miss that question, you'll spend years praying for a miracle while overlooking the very thing that God wants to multiply. So stay with me because before we're done, I'm going to challenge you to do something the widow almost didn't do. And it may reveal the very answer you've been praying for. See, we've been in a journey together. In part one, we talked about what to do when life didn't go as planned. We laid some things down, we picked up hope, and we decided that God is already in our next chapter. Part two, we went inside. We dealt with the mind because you can leave the situation, but if you don't renew your mind, you carry it with you into the next season. But today is where we get real practical. See, there's a moment that comes after the devastation, after the divorce is final, after the last box is packed, after the job ends or the dream falls through or the person you counted on walks away. There's this moment when you take a look around and you do inventory. And the inventory doesn't look like much. See, maybe it's just you and your kids and a bank account that's almost empty. Maybe it's your health, but not your marriage. Maybe it's your faith, but not your finances. Maybe it's just a little bit of strength left in you that you can't quite explain. Come here, sis. I want to ask you something. What if that's enough? What if what's left in your hands is exactly what God needs to do what's next in your life? What's your pot of oil? Today, we're going to the book of 2 Kings, chapter number 4, and we're going to sit with the woman who thought she had nothing left. And we're going to watch what God does with a little jar of oil, because I'm here to tell you what God did for her, He can do for you. He's the same God, and His provision has not expired. This is part 3. And if you haven't watched part 1 and part 2, go back. We're building on a foundation here. Now, let me say this. There is a dangerous moment that comes after loss. It's not the moment of impact, the phone call, the news, the ending. Most of us actually hold it together pretty good, pretty well in that moment. I've had plenty of those, right? The adrenaline kicks in, survival mode kicks in, but the dangerous moment is later. It's the Tuesday afternoon when the noise dies down, when everybody stops calling to check on you. It's when the casseroles stop coming, when people go back to their lives and expect you to go back to yours, as if nothing happened. And you sit down and you look at what's left, and then the enemy shows up right on time. And he does his favorite thing. He counts what's missing. You remember that in the garden? All the trees and the vegetation and everything, but you can't touch that tree. He says, look at what you lost. Look at what you don't have. Look at how far behind you are. Look at everyone else. And then look at you. You know, he did that in the garden. From the very beginning, he has us looking at what we don't have instead of the blessings that we do. All the trees in the garden. But that one, hmm, yeah, the enemy wants you to overlook your pot of oil. And sis, I'm telling you, that inventory, the one the enemy is doing, it will destroy you if you let it be the only inventory that you take. Because there is another inventory. There's the God inventory. And God doesn't start by counting what's missing. He starts by asking, what do you have? Now, from my devotionals in my book, Divinely Connected series, you know, sister to sister, the one that has 260 different devotionals as we walk through life together, there's an overall theme that asks this question. Are you spending so much time mourning what has taken or what was taken that you can't see what was left? Let me ask that question again. Are you spending so much time mourning what was taken that you can't see what was left? I usually say it this way. We should water a garden of future promises instead of a garden of regret. Stop looking back in the rear view mirror. The front windshield is a lot bigger. The question is, are you so focused on what was taken that you can't see what was left? Now, though I didn't ask for the divorce or my divorce, I realized I wouldn't have focused on helping women through great divorces if I hadn't gone through that or even what I am privileged to do now. Yeah, I woke up with that realization not too long ago. I wouldn't have the ability to talk to parents who have lost children if God didn't give me what I call a membership in a group that no one asked to be a part of. I wouldn't have building plans laying out on my bed one Sunday morning, looking at the electrical outlets and looking at the flow of things when our church was building if I had not gone to school to be an engineer. I've learned that God wastes absolutely nothing. Can I tell you something that took me years to understand? When I lost my daughter, I didn't or couldn't see purpose. When my marriage ended after decades, I couldn't see purpose. When my career shifted, I couldn't see purpose. In every season, all I could see initially was loss. But now, standing on this other side, I can see something I couldn't see then. God was never collecting pieces of my life. He was collecting tools for my assignment. Every painful season became preparation for a woman I would one day help. God wastes nothing. We're coming back to your pot of oil before the video ends. So let me tell you something else I know about God. He is in the business of doing extraordinary things with ordinary remainders. That's right. He fed 5,000 people with a little boy's lunch, 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. Really? He turned water into wine at a wedding when they ran out. He used a shepherd's staff to part the big Red Sea, and we keep talking about it today. And in 2 Kings chapter number 4, he used one small jar of oil to save a woman's entire future. Let me read it to you. But wait, before I read the story, and let me just share with you that I had a woman, many women, as they are getting ready to go through their divorce, and I'm helping them put their requests together, and they're in that raw stage, you know, that emotional point, and they're like, oh, it's a bad day. I always ask one question. that changes the entire situation. I ask, what's good? There's always something good. But our minds are so focused on what we lost that we don't remember and we don't recognize that we have more that is left than what left us. So, before I read this story, I want you to notice something. The widow never asked for multiplication, she asked for survival. And that's where many of us are. Yeah. We're praying to get through the week. God is planning to transform the future. Don't miss that. Because by the end of this story, God doesn't just meet her need, He changes her trajectory. So let's watch this. All right, I'm going to pull it up on the screen so that I can read as I'm talking to you. 2 Kings chapter number 4, beginning at verse 1. Let me read this verse for you, and I'm reading in the King James. The Bible says, "Now there cried a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets unto Elisha, saying, Thy servant my husband is dead, and thou knowest that thy servant did fear the Lord, and the creditor is coming, or is come to take unto him my two sons to be bondmen." Pause for a moment. This woman has lost her husband. She's in debt she did not create. And now the creditor is coming for her children? This woman, you can say, is at rock bottom. Like, what do I do now? She has grief and debt and threat pressing on her from every direction. She is not having a bad week, y'all. She is in crisis. Now, remember, in that time, the man took care of the household, and she had not covering any longer, and she also had no income and no way of getting income. Her sons were going to be the only thing that would be able to help her. And she comes to the prophet, and she doesn't stay home crying alone. She gets to and she goes to a person that God has positioned to speak into her situation. So write this down, because we're going to come back to it. Verse 2, it says, "And Elisha said to her, What shall I do for thee? Tell me, what hast thou in the house?" And here it is, the God question. Not what did you lose? Not what do you need? God, through the prophet, asks, what do you have? She says, and she said, Thine handmaid hath not anything in the house save a pot of oil. Her first thought was she had nothing. And you may initially think the same, but she continued, just a pot of oil. That's it. That's the inventory. One pot of oil. And in her voice, you can hear the apology. I have nothing except there's this one small pot of oil. But that's nothing. That can't possibly be enough. Sis, that small thing she almost dismissed, that was her miracle. Now, by the end of the message, I want you to know exactly what your pot of oil is. So here's the part that stopped me in my tracks when I studied this passage, and I share it often with the women that I get a chance to talk with. The oil wasn't the greatest miracle. I know that's what everybody tries to preach, that oil was the miracle that came through, but I don't think the oil was the miracle at all. The real miracle was something else entirely. And I'm going to show you what I mean in just a few minutes. So let's continue. Verses 3 through 6. Elisha tells her to go borrow empty vessels. All she can find, he says, not just a few, as many as she can gather. Then go inside, shut the door, and start pouring. She starts pouring from that one pot, and it fills one vessel, then another, then another, then another, as we would say, and so on, and so on, and so on. The oil just keeps coming and coming until there are no more empty vessels. And then verse 6 says, the oil stayed. Not until she was tired, not until she gave up. The oil stopped only when there was no more vessels to fill. Verse 7, Elisha says, go, sell the oil, and pay thy debt, and live thou and thy children of the rest. Pay your debt and live on the rest. From provision to payoff to surplus. Let me say that one again. From provision to payoff to surplus. From crisis to solvency to life. From nothing except a little pot of oil to everything she needed and more. Same God, Queen. Same God. The greatest miracle wasn't the oil. It was the shift in her perspective. The same thing that I get a chance to do with women that are crying, oh, he left the lawnmower and my son doesn't have a father and, all of this thing. What is good? And one woman said to me, I really want to paint my room and I don't have to listen to him tell me he doesn't like the color. Different perspective. Paint the room, sis. Enjoy the freedom. You don't have to answer to anyone else any longer. What do you have left? What now? Change your perspective and see the beauty that remains. All right. Now, I want to pull 3 principles from this story because this is not just a Bible story. Or we can go in so many different ways with this. What is the gift that you have that can then be utilized? And there's just so much here. It's not just a Bible story. This is a blueprint for what God does when you bring him your remainder. All right. So principle number 1, answer the God question honestly. Elisha asked, what do you have? And the widow answered honestly. She could have said nothing, and she almost did, but she caught herself. Save a pot of oil. So, Queen, you have to answer that question. Not the enemy's version, that I have nothing, I've lost everything, I don't know how I'm going to make it. No, we're not going to answer like that. We're going to answer the God version. What do I have? So let me ask you right now, not later, but right now. What is in your house? Maybe it's your health, your mind, your faith, your children. A skill that you've had since you were 15. A relationship that's still intact. A gift that nobody has been able to take from you no matter what they tried. Name it. Because what you're holding right now, even if it feels small, even if it feels like it's not enough, it is what God is asking you to bring to him. You cannot pour from an empty vessel, but you have more than empty. You have a pot of oil. So name it. Now, before I give you principle number 2, I need you to answer something honestly. If I asked you today, what do you have? what would be your first answer? Would it sound like faith or would it sound like fear? Okay, principle number 2, borrow boldly, prepare for more than you can see. Can I lovingly confront something? Now, I know I've probably been challenging you all along, but can I confront something right now? Some of us aren't disappointed because God didn't provide. We're disappointed because we've stopped expecting. We've shrunk our containers to match our pain. See, Elijah did not say borrow 2 or 3 vessels. He said borrow as many as you can find. And the text tells us the oil kept flowing until there was no more empty vessels. The limitation wasn't the miracle. The limitation was the containers. Let me say that one again. The miracle didn't run out. The containers did. So, Queen, God's provision for your life is not the limiting factor. Your expectation is. So enlarge your vision and your capacity. Because some of you are preparing for a small miracle because you've been disappointed before. So you borrow 2 or 3 vessels just in case. Just enough to be cautiously hopeful. But God is saying, I was ready to fill 50. I see this in business too. I want to launch and I only want to make $5,000. God was willing to give you 50,000. What can we believe for? Okay. What if you started preparing for more than you can currently see? What if you cleaned out the spare room, not because there's someone to move in, but because you're believing for it? What if you updated your resume, not because there's a job offer, but because you're preparing for one? What if you started doing the inner work now so you're ready when the next chapter opens? Don't let your containers limit your miracle. I'm reminded that the same thing happened with the nets with the disciples. Remember, they were cleaning their nets, and he said, cast your nets, plural, on the other side to get a great haul. And they cast a net, and it was so much that the net started breaking that they had to even call for their friends to come help them because the boat was sinking. The haul was so great. Enlarge your expectation. Believe boldly. All right, principle number 3. This one's going to get you. Close the door. Do the work privately. Now, this one is for the sis who is performing her healing on social media before she's actually healed, or writing a book that doesn't go deep because she really isn't healed, but the book promises complete healing. I'm saying this with love. Elisha told the widow to go inside and shut the door. The miracle happened in private, behind closed doors, without an audience. See, everybody wants the testimony, but few people want the hidden season. Everybody wants the overflow, and few people want the pouring. Everybody wants the platform, but few people want the private process. There's a season of rebuilding that needs to happen away from public commentary, where you are doing the inner work, where you are crying out to God, where you are dealing with what you actually are dealing with, not the version you post about. Some of you need to shut the door on the noise of comparison, the door on other people's timelines, the door on the voices that question why it's taking you so long. And you need to pour. Do the work in private. Let God fill your vessels before you go public with a testimony. Because when He's done, when the oil is flowing and the debt is paid and you're living on the rest, then, sis, your story will set somebody else free. But first, close the door and pour. Before I started coaching, I actually went to Costa Rica with my daughter on a business trip that she was doing. And I walked on the beach by myself. And I said, Lord, where do I need to be healed? I can't help somebody if I am not healed. What do I need to fix? And let me tell you, it's a continual process. We have to shut the door. We have to allow God to pour into our lives and pour into us before we pour out. You can't pour from an empty cup. Now, let me get practical because I want to give you an assignment for this week, right? I want you to do 3 things. 1, take the God inventory, not the enemies. I want you to grab your journal and I want you to write at the top, what do I still have? And list everything. Your faith, your body, your mind, your gifts, your people, your time. Start naming it because you have more than you think. Number 2, borrow a vessel. Do one thing this week that requires you to believe for more than you can currently see. One thing that says to God, I'm preparing for the miracle. Start the application, make the call, write the first page, buy the journal, do the thing that hope requires. And then number 3, close the door, or close a door, I should say. Identify one source of noise that is drowning out what God is saying. One voice, one feed, one comparison that has been shrinking your containers. And close that door this week. Now, before I leave you, I want you to participate in something powerful. I want you to type 2 words in the comments. Yeah, it's really 3. No, 2 words after this. You're going to start with, I still have, and you're going to finish the sentence. I still have faith. I still have strength. I still have purpose. I still have hope. I still have my voice. I still have. Because every time you declare what's left, you silence the lie that says you've lost everything. Okay? I still have. Type it in the comments. All right, Queen. In this series, we have walked a road together. We're not finished yet. But part 1, we dealt with what to do when life didn't go as planned. We learned to grieve with purpose, to let go of the former things, and position ourselves for hope. In part 2, we went to the mind. We dealt with why we keep carrying the old season into the new one. And we started the 3 renewals, interrupting the loop, changing our input, and speaking until we believe it. And now in part 3 today, we looked at what's left. We sat with the widow. We answered the God question. We borrowed boldly, and we closed the door and poured. And next week, Part four is coming. We put it all together because here's what the widow's story reveals that we didn't even finish talking about today. She didn't do this alone. Elisha sent her to the community. She borrowed vessels from your neighbors. That's right. That's what we're going to borrow. There's one detail in this story that most people completely miss. The widow's miracle didn't happen because she had oil. It happened because she had access. Access to a prophet, access to neighbors, access to community. And next week, I'm going to show you why isolation may be costing you more than you realize, and why God's answer to your next season may already be sitting in somebody else's house. So don't miss part four. And make sure you subscribe. If this message on provision and multiplication touched your spirit today, I want you to go watch the video I did on the parable of the talents and stewardship. That's right. It builds directly on what we talked about today, being faithful with what's left in your hands. And I'll put the link right here and in the description below. The title is Broke Doesn't Mean Broken, what Jesus taught about little and much. All right, I'm Dr. Chonta Haynes. I'm your destiny designer, also known as your biblical money management expert. I'm helping you put feet to your faith so that you can walk victoriously. Have a blessed and a prosperous rest of your day. God bless.